Ever wondered how artificial intelligence can revolutionize learning and business while still keeping our minds sharp? Welcome back to Extra AI, your go to show for unpacking real world AI conversations. I'm your host, Raghu Banda, and today we're joined by a very special guest, Dr. Ashwin Mehta, founder and director of Mehtadology. Dr. Mehta is an AI strategist, thought leader, and management consultant who has worked at senior levels across transport, consulting, medical, and pharmaceutical sectors, panopta.com. He holds an MBA and a PhD in learning technology adoption, panopta.com, and leads a consultancy dedicated to guiding organizations through the AI revolution, Mehtadology.com. We're about to dive into how data literacy, purposeful AI deployment, and human AI synergy can reshape our organizations and our lives. Let's get started.
All right, welcome back to our Extra AI podcast series on AI and machine learning applications. Today, I have the honor of talking with Mr. Ashwin Mehta, co-founder and CEO of Mehtadology. And the topic today is about AI Unplugged, a candid conversation with Ashwin. Welcome on board, Ashwin.
Thank you for having me.
So, Ashwin, again, before we set the stage, I would like to understand, like, I know you you are a chemist turned consultant, something like that. And how did you end up founding this AI centric consultancy called Mehtadology? I know it's based out of your last name. It's
Of course.
a little different.
Yeah, so I started my career doing chemistry, and I was working for a small company that was doing chemical research, synthetic chemistry. And over time, I moved from that into consulting in the chemical industry. So that was the next thing that I did.
Mhm.
And I moved through that into a medical research company, and I had the opportunity to do many different things there. And I touched every part of the business, really. I was looking at business resilience towards the end of it. And one of the things I was doing was I was doing a project in West Africa, in the Gambia.
Mhm.
And we were looking at aspects of resilience for the business. So we were looking at flood defenses on the river. We were looking at facilities and power and broadband and all of these interesting things. And I got to the point where I was having a conversation with some field staff
Mhm.
because they had field stations and they had folks who went out into communities and they were doing health education, hygiene dissemination, and doing referrals and things like this. And I was talking to these folks, and really I was having a conversation about how do you deliver this frontline capability?
Mhm.
And they had 300 field workers that they were recruiting from local communities. And they were sitting them in a classroom and they were training them up over 16, 20 weeks, something like that, to
Mhm.
be field workers. And that seemed to me very complex. So I broached the question with the leadership and I said, well, how about we do some of this digitally? That seems to be a core aspect of frontline work of the entire operations of the business. And the conversation turned very quickly to, well, we don't really have enough internet. We don't have the systems in place. We don't have the computer skills. We don't have, so many things that would need to be built. And my attitude always was, well, nothing is insurmountable. Let's try and build these things and see if we can get a better outcome.
Mhm.
So for the next few years, that's basically what I did. I worked in various African countries looking at this. And I became quite interested. I was doing an MBA and a PhD, and became quite interested in statistical modeling of human behavior. And at the time, it was I had a number of available technologies to me that I could use for statistical modeling.
Mhm.
So I eventually rested on doing partial least square structural equation modeling, which is a thing. If anybody's watching, you know what that is. But that was, broadly speaking, statistics using computer modeling.
Hmm.
And I had the opportunity at the time to test out other things. So I was looking at Python, I was looking at machine learning, I was looking at neural networks to see if I could weight the model slightly differently. And after my PhD, I got a little bit more into that. And I had the available data sets, and I was looking for open source data sets. And I moved into a consulting firm, Big Four consulting firm, where I had the opportunity to work on lots of different things, lots of
Right.
tech projects, some of them AI, some of them digital twin, some of them looking at blockchain, lots of opportunity to flex my creativity in the tech space. And over time, I thought, I kind of want to do this. I want
Mm.
to do this a little bit more. And I was working at a pharmaceutical company leading up the learning tech and AI. I had an AI team there as well. Generative AI hit, and it
Mhm.
became the thing that nobody will leave a conversation without mentioning. So it became the only thing that everybody wanted to talk about. So actually, I run a tech strategy company, but I
Mhm.
have to have AI in there because AI is the only tech that people want to look at the moment. But it's worth noting that there are other technologies available that may solve different problems.
Mhm. Beautiful, beautiful, amazing, amazing journey, and how you kind of got into this, and great to know that. I know many people use AI tools today without even realizing it, that they are doing uh, some kind of magic, or some kind of strategy, or some kind of tool which is happening in the background. Can you share an example on how AI quietly is shaping the regular lives, and why organizations must become more AI literate to stay more competitive? Right. I think I know there are a lot
Yeah.
of examples out there, but if you can come up with, coming with your background, what do you see?
Yeah, I'll give you a handful. So I think the big examples of how it's changing our lives really are in the consumer space rather than the business space.
Mm.
Businesses will take decisions to deploy things based on use cases, and that's fine. But people, generally speaking, people who are workers, people who are students, are becoming more conversant with artificial intelligence because they're using things on a daily basis in their personal life.
Mhm.
Most people, if they want to find something out, they go to YouTube or they go to Google, they go to the internet. You go to Google, do a Google search. Nowadays, it's Gemini powered. So you have AI recommendations that are telling you a summary of what's out there. You go to YouTube, and your entire feed is curated based on what you've already interacted with. The same with Netflix, the same with Spotify, the same with your Amazon purchases. All of these things are being powered to some degree by recommender algorithms that allow those companies to see the similarities between your behavior in their platform and other people's behavior in the platform to serve you recommendations. And that's something that has just quietly become part of everyday life. We expect to go to a platform and
Right.
see something that's relevant to us. We don't expect to have to search. The other aspect, of course, is Google Maps is a superb example of something that we just use all the time in our daily lives. If you take an Uber, you have algorithms that are optimizing the route that people are driving. If you have deliveries, Deliveroo or Blinkit or anything like this, you have uh, optimized
Mhm.
the drivers that are around, the people who can pick up the goods, and how they're going to get to your place delivering those goods. So there are so many things in our lives now which are effectively AI powered in the consumer space that it's important that we understand that this is just everywhere and it's something that we need to know about.
Mhm. Mhm. So, yeah, great, great. I think so. This is where I think we see how AI is transforming learning and business on a regular basis, whether it is the enterprise businesses or the consumer businesses, especially whether it is the learning or development, or whether it is even with human capital. A lot of these things are changing.
Hmm.
Let's get into a bit of the genesis of methodology. I think maybe what was that particular gap you saw in the market that inspired you maybe to start this methodology, or maybe in your words, what triggered you to start that?
Yeah, so while I was studying, while I was doing my PhD, while I was doing my research, I came to terms with the fact that the thing I'm most interested in is a robust method. making sure that you can reach your findings without error in a way that is grounded in some assumptions and grounded in some limitations. And that's the scientific way to be able to do those things. And I went from there into industry, into consulting, Big Four consulting. And what I noticed most of the time was things were done in a fairly sloppy way. So
Mhm.
rather than saying I'm going to triangulate lots of data and reach a conclusion, the norm was I'm going to ask 25 of my friends what they think, and I'm going to write that into a paper, call it an insights paper, publish it everywhere. You see these everywhere from the
Right.
likes of McKinsey and all of these folks. So we had one from MIT, I guess, last week, with 95%, I think it was, of Gen AI projects are not being adopted, or they're not companies are not seeing value. Right? Did you
Yeah.
read this? You saw this?
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
look at
I
the
saw that.
method?
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you look at the method?
I didn't look at the method, but yeah.
Right. So without looking at the method, we have no idea how they reached that conclusion.
Yes. Yes.
And looking at the method, what I found was they made an assumption or they made a conclusion based on workforce adoption. These are the people on the ground level, the folks who are using or not using artificial intelligence, by asking CEOs and department heads. So
Mhm.
we didn't even ask these people what they're using.
Yeah.
And if we didn't ask these folks what they're using, how can we possibly reach a conclusion?
Right.
And it's grounded in the method. So I'm very, very interested in this kind of thing. Are
Mhm.
we making assumptions? Are we making assertions? Are we saying things that are just factually incorrect? And then they get picked up by the media, they get picked up by the headlines and take the internet by storm. So, because I was interested in the methodology of
Mhm.
research and I was interested in that rigor, and with my surname being what it is, I thought this is perfect. I'm going to marry these two things, make a name. And what I want to do is to make sure that we do projects in a way where error is minimized. So we have clients who are potentially struggling with the AI revolution, trying to make sense of the market, trying to figure out what the use cases are, whether they have return on investment. Wouldn't it be great if we could have some kind of rigor around that rather than just guessing and figuring out, well, let's try a bunch of things, and if they don't work, we've all got plenty of money, it will be okay, right? It's better if you've got some analysis up front. So I wanted to do my projects with a little bit of that flavor to make sure that we have a good view of what's gone on before.
Mhm.
And my observations of the learning and development market broadly were that learning departments don't even know the learning literature. They don't know what gives efficacy. And most departments default basically to producing the e-learning that we all know and probably hate, where you click through a bunch of boring screens and you don't learn anything at the end. So the opportunity from AI really is to change that a little bit as well. But that's the genesis. That's how I got to this point of trying to have a company that does something that's slightly more rigorous than others.
Interesting. I think it's a great way of putting it out, right? I think we know a lot of these things are happening, and how do we get that? Um, so let's get into something of the current AI innovations that are happening, right? I think
Mhm.
as an AI strategist and uh, maybe a learning technology leader and other things, what are those current innovations in the current AI market or in the current trend are you most excited about, and which you are leveraging when you are getting into your concepts of methodology when we talk about?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of parts to this. So one is the
Mhm.
part where we say, what is most exciting?
Yeah,
And what is most exciting? There are so many exciting things out there.
right,
We have
right.
the capability to make video and voice and photos and things that look and sound and seem exactly like a person.
Hmm.
And all of that stuff is interesting visually. It's interesting from an audio perspective. And lots of people are, going to ChatGPT and typing in some things and, doesn't that sound like a real person? Doesn't it sound like a person said this? And we might get some rudimentary benefits from that kind of thing in an organizational setting. But it's not, although it's visually exciting, it's not exciting from a revenue or a value perspective. It's not exciting from a return on investment perspective. And the thing that is most exciting to me is that when we look at model benchmarking, every new model that comes out has some benchmarking associated with it. So whether it's GPT-5 or Grok 4 Super Heavy recently came out, and they were boasting that these models now behave at the level or can produce responses at the level of a PhD candidate.
Mm-hmm.
Great. What does that actually mean? Well, what that means is that we have model capabilities in certain domains, whether it's maths, physics, coding, statistics, maybe even critical thinking, analysis, reasoning, whatever it happens to be. We have models that are capable of producing a response that is greater in outcome than the level of response that most of the population would be able to give. Because let's not pretend that most of the population globally does not have an education that is a master's degree or a PhD level education.
Right.
Most folks cannot produce that level of output in terms of error findings, review of the literature, etc. So what does that mean for the future of work? Well, it means that we have a potential future in front of us where either people need to get much, much better at some things, or we will rely on models to do these kinds of
Right.
things. But going back to the point about people interacting with ChatGPT or Grok in a one-to-one kind of relationship, well, I think the big opportunity that excites me is the potential for either multi-agent hierarchies or agentic workflows that has become very, very easy to do in many, many platforms. The
Mm-hmm.
barrier to entry is so low that the entire concept of back office functions for most businesses could be revolutionized over a very short period. And the return on investment for that is likely to be huge. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a massive opportunity that I think is very interesting.
Great, great. I think you brought up a very interesting point, right? I think nowadays, I think at least the year of 2025, there is a lot of talk about agents. And at one of
Hmm.
these conferences where I was presiding and I was talking about, I think there is this gentleman who was talking about saying that there are about 60 million plus agents being under preparation or being under work, meaning different forms. I think now I can understand like what you meant by saying that this agentic workflows, because the whole backend or the back office operations are going to be driven by these agentic workflows, right? I think
Yeah.
having said that, I'm pretty sure there will be some kind of barriers to the AI adoption, right? I think many organizations, they know they need to invest in AI, but they still struggle to start. What are those in your experience or in your interactions? What are those typical challenges you see when companies are trying to implement AI in learning and development or other functions? And how are you trying to address that?
Yeah, so I have worked in learning and development, customer success, customer service, marketing, sales, all of these
Mhm.
different functions. And broadly, the success is nearly always the same, and the failures are nearly always the same. And the failures are trying to start off too big.
Mhm.
So we're going to do an enterprise implementation of OpenAI Enterprise, or we're going to try and implement Copilot across lots of people, and we're just going to give them licenses and see what they do. That is scale implementation that has pretty much no purpose behind it. It's
Mhm.
just we want to do AI because we don't want to miss out. FOMO is not a strategy. It's not a good, way to run your business. Where there are successes, it's usually we have this very clear use case of something that costs us time and effort. It's a process. Maybe we want to do something in a way that's repeatable and scalable, and we just want to apply a workflow to that. We just want to apply a point solution to this.
Mhm.
Not that we've got lots of platforms that we already have in place, and some of the vendors are telling us they now have AI, but we
Mhm.
don't really know what we're going to use it for. So the success really is around having clarity on what you want to apply AI in its most general sense too. And that could be a an automation. It doesn't even have to be AI. It could just be an
Mhm.
automation, something that you can move data from one place to another, maybe transform it a little bit, and we're kind of done. it could be slightly agentic. So you have some decision making in the workflow, you have the capability for triage or multiple avenues down which a decision can be funneled, and you get different outcomes from that. So all of these things are possible right now with a little bit of an investment in skills, in time, in defining what the use case is, and figuring out who's going to build you something that's a prototype that demonstrates some kind of return on investment. I think the broad brush approach of just saying, let's just do AI and see if it works. Most companies pretty much don't see value from that.
Beautiful. Yeah, I completely echo with your thoughts and the perspectives that you've provided. So let's get into your recent writings, right? I think in your recent writings, you warned about the risk of cognitive atrophy when people are relying overly on AI. So how can these businesses or enterprises, they can balance automation while preserving and also developing human skills or critical thinking? Is there something that you could, in your thoughts, I think, or in your perspective, uh, provide some thoughts?
Yeah, so I think the first question is, do we want to develop critical thinking?
Yeah, yeah.
It's a question because if we want to devolve our reasoning capability to machines in a way that's relatively standardized, machines can already achieve some of these things in a way that's far superior to most of the population. And I've made this point before, I'll make it again. That is, population capabilities are normally distributed. There is a curve with top performers, the mean, and then low performers. And it doesn't matter what the attribute is. Mostly populations will be distributed in this kind of bell shape.
Mm-hmm.
And if that is true, then we have to think about where is most of our population. And the mean point is obviously the middle, the
Right.
arithmetic average. But where is a model capability? Where is a workflow capability on this spectrum?
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's greater than most of our employees, we have to make a decision. And that decision is, do we try and do the difficult thing, which is upskill most of the population, upskill most of our workforce in something that maybe will be done by a machine in the future?
Mm.
It's a risk. And it's with everything that's related to risk in a business, the business must think about its innovation appetite, its risk appetite, and make a decision on what the business wants to do that's best for revenue, shareholders, social responsibility, all of these things. So I think it's very contextual. It depends on the business. If you want to go down this road of developing critical thinking, for example, or reasoning or problem solving or any of these things that we traditionally say are in the human domain,
Mm-hmm.
then we must think carefully about what interventions are going to deliver that outcome. And the traditional interventions for most learning departments, which is we're going to sit everybody in a classroom for 4 hours and tell them about critical thinking, and then they come out and we say, great, you're now a critical thinker. Well done. Here's a certificate. Go off and think critically. It doesn't make any sense, right? We need sustained problem solving. We need sustained thinking through potentially difficult situations and problems that will allow folks to think in a way that's potentially going to deliver value. Is that lift too large? Potentially. But the risk on the other side is if we outsource our thinking to a machine all the time, then of course, at some point, we're not going to be very good at the things that we don't do. And that's just a decision that we need to make.
So there is a thin line between what machines can do and what humans would still be doing, right? I think when you are getting to a stage, an average, like you said, an average ChatGPT user can get a lot of things done using ChatGPT or Gemini or so on and so forth. But where do you draw the line between where the machine would take over versus how an average user would be leveraging? And see, the question I'm trying to come up is, how do we inculcate that kind of a critical thinking mentality in the current Gen Z or the current generation? For us,
Yeah.
I think we went through this. So this is where I always, I know we have now a lot of tools out there the last 2, 3 years, things have changed tremendously. Having said that, we should still not hold the tools back. But how do we still inculcate that kind of a thinking in the upcoming generation? I think that's what are your thoughts or some perspectives?
So this is the generational question is a very
Yeah,
difficult one.
yeah.
So I was talking a couple of weeks ago with my mother. So I go around every Sunday to see my parents, and we have dinner. My sister's there. My sister has 2 kids, and
Mhm.
we were talking, and my mother was saying about the my sister's daughter. She doesn't write anymore. She doesn't put pen to paper. She just
Mhm.
texts, and the texts that she's sending are not very verbose. They're not, no big words. It's kind of, abbreviations and, very short messages. And it's such a shame. Now, my, you know, slightly flippant train of thought there was, well, I personally have lost the ability to carve words into a stone tablet, or to chase down a bird and pluck its feathers and find some ink in the forest and carve some bark off a tree and write with that feather and that ink into the bark of the tree. I don't have those skills
Mhm.
because I never needed them.
Yeah.
So we're kind of in this evolving state where we need to be thinking about what the people who are that generation that's just entering the workforce now, what skills might they need versus how much are we pushing our skills, the skills that we worked hard and fought hard for,
Mm.
how much are we pushing those skills onto the new folks just because it was hard for us to get those skills? We think they're valuable.
Mm.
And I don't have a good answer for that because it
Mm.
depends on the workplace. It
Yeah.
depends on the things that that workplace is doing. Is it valuable for somebody to learn how to dig a hole when we have a robot that might dig a hole in the future?
Mm.
We probably still need to understand how to do that. And we'll
Mm.
figure it out and we'll get there. But with the knowledge work where folks are working, I think, we keep talking about people working directly with ChatGPT. I think as we move into the age of agentic workflows and automation, we might see a little bit less of that. We might see people calling models into a workflow for very specific things, and they could be agents, they could be assistants, they could be something else. So we might see a little bit less of that kind of creative play with the machines, which I think we should maintain that. But the best way to upskill the new generation is, well, there are two answers to this. One is, do they want to be upskilled?
Mm.
Because we can't force it on them.
Mhm.
And the other side of it is the competitive edge within the generation. There will
Mhm.
always be people who compete, who will find a way, who will use the tech, who will get ahead because they're hungry to get ahead. They have a drive and they have an ambition to do that. And they will skill themselves. And we will look at those top performers and we will see that's the path. That's the way to do it.
Beautiful.
So we're quite early, but we need to both observe and take some basic AI literacy actions within organizations.
Right. Right. I know. Yeah, I get what you're trying to say. I think there will always be these leaders, I think, who will come up with innovative ways of how you can get these things delivered or new ways of doing things. And then, of course, we are all learning as it goes. We're learning to adapt. So let's come back to your consultancy and your
Mhm.
methodology. I know it's easier to get deviated into these kind of interesting topics and discussion.
Yeah,
I would briefly want to talk about demystifying AI through frameworks. I know your consultancy
yeah.
of research services and frameworks like the data literacy framework for the generative AI age, right? For what
Hmm.
we are doing. How do these how do you help, or how do these frameworks help organizations navigate their complex AI landscapes, right, and build AI readiness? I know many of these firms have a lot of complex landscapes, right? I think with
Hmm.
or without these new AI tools. But how do you guys try to navigate them or steer them through that?
Yeah, so I'll pick up on the point about AI readiness. So we have an AI readiness model, and that model has basically seven categories. So we have leadership, strategy, governance, we have tech, data, culture, and skills. So there are seven areas that we look at. Each of those areas has some methodology, approach, models, frameworks underneath it. If we take the strategy
Mhm.
portion of that as an example, so we might say, well, as I earlier said, that companies that have identified use cases are going to be more targeted in their AI use than those who just implement something broadly.
Mhm.
So in the strategy space, how do we define, first of all, what a company wants? How's it going to do it? What areas of the business it can afford to implement AI with? What are the top 25, 50, whatever they are, use cases? How do we prioritize those in a structured manner? And I have structured approaches within the frameworks to get to a point where we know these are all of the use cases that we're going to try in the next quarter, in the next 6 months. We prioritize them. We've got funding available. We know what teams can do, what they can't do, where we have a data dependency, where we don't. We've got that structure. It's on one page. We
Mhm.
can assign funds. We can put a timeline in place. We can start building those things and trying them out. So that's an example of a structured approach that comes from a framework that
Mhm.
helps clients to demystify what it is that they're going to do. In
Mhm.
the tech space, we also have frameworks around making sense of the market. So the market seems like it's broad and sprawling because most people are looking at point solutions, which do one thing. So there's one video generation tool. Oh, there's another video generation tool. Oh, there's a third. How do I keep up with this? Because now there's a fourth. Fine, that's video gen. That's part of a segment of the market. If you're making videos, maybe get into that. But
Mhm.
broadly, companies are going to be doing a wide variety of things. So if we can segment the market, we can identify the internal and external landscape, which we do. We have models and frameworks for that, and we do work with clients on that. Then we can start to match the tech to the problems in the strategy space
Mhm.
and figure out where we're going to get use cases that are valuable that give a return. So that's an example of an approach which is drawing from two sections of a framework where we have collateral and we have approaches for this, and methodology, of course, is very important. So we have methods to get there, and we apply those methods in our consulting with our clients.
Mhm. Beautiful, beautiful. So let's get into a real example, right? I think we don't need to talk about the names of the customers or the clients for confidentiality
Yeah.
purposes. But if you can pick up a particular example and how your your service or your consultancy has helped solve for the
Hmm.
customer and showcase the the success and the return on investment. How did you work on coming up
Yeah.
with the AI strategy, or maybe an example that would be helpful?
So I'll give you two examples.
Mhm.
So one is that clients tend to be at different stages of the journey. So that's why I'll give you a couple of examples.
Mhm.
So example one is right at the start of the journey. Are we prepared to do things in the AI space? How do we make sense of the market? Where do we begin? That's quite a common set of questions. So with that, I have worked with a client where I have gone through a light touch version of the readiness program. So the readiness program comes in two flavors. One is we have a model,
Mhm.
and that model is something that we will work through directly with clients. The other version of that is we have a platform which has a programmatic 1 year progression for clients. So you can sign up, you can go through step by step, create the artifacts, see templates, see documents, embed them, come back and tick off that you've done them, benchmark yourself against other organizations. So we have that platform as well. So it can come in two flavors. But the example that I'm giving is working with a client doing the kind of more face-to-face version of this, building a case that will then set up their AI division against specific use cases with a specific tech base that
Mhm.
they can use and with a couple of skills and literacy programs. So that starts them on the journey of moving forward with AI. If we move to the other end of the spectrum, we have multiple clients kind of in this bucket, but clients where they say, well, we know what a use case is. We want this particular thing. We want for example, our learners to be able to interact with our content in a way that moves us away from e-learning. We want our clients to be able to interact with our platform in a way that they can leverage our data. We want our stakeholders to be able to access something that is in a repository that we have. So with that, can we have the capability of being able to talk conversationally like we are right now with a voice agent that has a number of workflows that allows us to capture data, that allows us to send something by email that people can say, well, this is what I asked for, and here's the document that I wanted, here's a summary of the things that I wanted, in a way that's accurate, that doesn't hallucinate, that draws directly from a vector store, that is 100% deterministic. Can we do that? And I've had multiple clients asking for this kind of thing because we've gone through the strategy space into a few defined use cases where we can build something, test it out, and we have the quick wins. Because we are a consultancy that also has development capability, that positions us slightly differently because we can strategize in a way that's realistic and we can build things that move the strategic roadmap forward.
Beautiful. All right, so let's get into this interesting question. I term this the extra AI question, the $1,000,000 or the $1,000,000,000 question. Differentiation and the real world impact, right? I think
Yeah.
I know this consulting space, and that too in the age of AI, is very competitive. What does or how does methodology's approach differentiate? Could you share what is your differentiation factor, or one that
Yeah.
or something like that?
Absolutely. So differentiation for us, as I've just said, is we can build things and we can build prototype rapidly, move through to production for the things that we've strategized about, for the things that are in the vision, for the things that are part of your leadership and direction that are moving forward. That's a differentiator because that's not always the case in the AI space. And particularly in AI and L&D, we have a lot of thought leaders, strategists out there who've never built anything, some of them never even worked in a department. So they've got no in-house expertise and they can't necessarily build anything. So when they're doing a strategy, it's basically fantasy. It's fantasy on a document. And it's nice because you can talk and say big words and rally the troops and get people bought into a vision. But then usually it falls over because the folks who are delivering that have never really built anything. So our differentiator is we can do end-to-end consulting. So we can do the vision and the strategy. We can do the market landscaping. We can do the prototyping and the piloting. We can do the agentic workflows. We can look at data strategy and implementation of data infrastructure all the way through to skills programs. So because we have that end-to-end, we can do all of that stuff. That means the strategy that you're getting is going to be grounded and real. It's going to be value adding and it's going to move towards the ROI in a way that's evidenced by analysis.
And you have teams across the globe. It doesn't matter which, where you have to, okay. And the expertise is across. Okay. Beautiful.
The point about teams is interesting because I've also said this on a number of other podcasts, but we're in a situation now where what do you want from your consultants? Do you want headcount? Because a forward-thinking consultancy should be leveraging multi-agent frameworks, agentic workflows. We should have, and I do have, a team of maybe 25, 30 people that are completely agentic. I also have headcount, but it depends on how we want to approach our businesses. If we're only going to be looking at headcount, then to some degree you have to sacrifice and acknowledge the fact that you're going to be paying large sums of money to people who are going to be making PowerPoints for you. Versus when you have the analysis and you have some of this development that's being taken care of agentically, the value proposition is very different.
Yep, I agree with that. So I know we are coming to the end of the conversation, but before I let you go, I have a couple of other questions. I know there's a lot happening out there. What are your thoughts about the new AI innovations that are speeding up? We've moved from narrow AI to generative AI to agentic AI, and now we talk a lot about how I still remember, like a couple of years back, I think when we've journeying into this, the AI tools are more like a co-pilot, but now we are
Mhm.
entering a generation or entering a space where humans, like you mentioned, will be assisting the agents. So you will maybe working together with a bunch of agents and performing or completing a task. What do you foresee in the next 3 to 5 years, and how do you foresee consulting uh, evolving in this space?
So I think it's difficult to say this without saying I'm ahead of the curve. I'm doing all this stuff now. Come to me. But I don't necessarily mean it like that. But
Yeah.
a typical day for me is I will, and many of my team are the same. But a typical day for me is I will have a number of agentic workflows that are working all the time.
Mhm.
I will have a number of databases that are being pulled and written, read write. That's happening a lot of the time. I may also have three or four. I've got three screens here. I may also have three or four instances of different things open at once that are working alongside whatever I'm doing. So agent one, let's call it ChatGPT or Gemini or something. You go off and do this task while another one does a different task, while another agent is looking at a third task. I've got on my desktop, just looking at my desktop, I've got Claude and Perplexity sitting there. I've got Copilot, I've got GPT. Depending on what I want to use,
Mhm.
they all have capabilities. They can all be running at once, while workflows are also calling instances via API of these same models. That is a very different level of productivity than a few years ago when we had folks who were basically writing Excels and PowerPoints by hand.
Mhm.
So we have that now. And when we talk about the future of consulting,
Mhm.
why wouldn't it be something like this? One person being effectively the orchestrator
Mhm.
for many workflows and many agents to produce something of value in a fraction of the time. That seems reasonable if we take the ethical stance that we still want people in the workplace.
Mhm.
We might take the other stance and say, actually, from the client perspective, their AI is going to ask something of their consultant's AI and get an output. And the whole thing is going to happen seamlessly, and people don't necessarily need to be involved. So I think we have these couple of different layers. Now, how the 100% agentic layer works with the human oversight layer, I think that would be interesting to see how that works out. I don't know, but it seems that productivity, growth, economic growth, revenue will all be very, very different if most companies have this undercurrent of things happening in the background.
Mhm. I like, yes, I completely echo with your thoughts. I like the way you've mentioned. How does the agentic layer or agentic workflows interact with humans or human layer or human ecosystem? I think there are still tasks that need to be done uh, by the humans. I think that's how we are evolving. Yeah. Well, great talking with you. So as we wrap up, could you share any key takeaways for our listeners and any closing thoughts?
Yeah. So I think the natural question for everybody is, well, what about me? What about my jobs? What do I do?
Mm.
And I think everybody should go and think about probably three areas that they want to go into.
Mm.
So the first, I think the future is basically three pillars. So one is data. We're going to need to curate data, clean data, manage it in a way that's useful and usable to whatever the AI systems are that we have. The second is the AI systems themselves. Are we going to buy them? We're going to build them. Are we going to make workflows? There are skills needed in that space. And the third area is people, because people are still going to be in society, they're still going to be working, they're still going to have needs and wants, and the interpersonal relationship side of things is also important. So I think the future is probably these three areas. So if the big question is, what does this mean for me? What it means to me is you need to upskill in one or maybe two or maybe all of these areas to make sure that you're flexible enough for the potential future that we have.
Mm. Beautiful. I think data, AI, and people, I think how you can use the data and in building these and use the different kinds of data in these AI tools and how people can seamlessly use them. Yes, I completely echo with that. Well, thanks having. That's a great conversation. I think I liked what you guys are doing and some of the concepts that you have mentioned. Thanks for your time.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
That's a wrap on today's Extra AI episode. Huge thanks to Dr. Ashwin Mehta for sharing his insights on demystifying AI and building data savvy teams. Remember his key takeaways: start with clear objectives, invest in AI literacy at every level, and keep humans in the loop to avoid cognitive atrophy. If you enjoyed this conversation, check the show notes for links to Mehtadology's research and upcoming webinars. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes where we'll continue extracting raw AI conversations. Until next time, keep learning, stay curious, and let's shape the future together. Happy predicting the future with AI technologies, and stay extra.